Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the end of week 6. Pleasure to be with you again to wrap up this week. Our focus has been on active reading and note taking, and hopefully, after this presentation, I'll have hopefully left you with some strategies to think about and just even some things to think about with respect to note taking and active reading. I have to tell you that each week I continue to say the same thing, but these strategies, these things that we're talking about, these topics, are not topics that are just germane to university life, to life as a student. These are things that we continue to work with in our daily lives, well beyond university. And hopefully, as a result of some of the stuff may stick with you and hopefully help you in whatever the future may hold. So, I want to start by talking a little bit about why we read and really in particular talk about reading for understanding. Oftentimes we do readings. I hear this a lot, and I even think back to and reflect on my time as a university student. I used to call it the dreaded reading. So reading because we have to reading because it's part of the course, and I'm required to do so. The reality is that makes it, I think, much more difficult, based on my own experience, much more difficult to read for understanding because we don't have the vested interest. And so there are lots of pieces to this puzzle. Obviously, being in courses that we enjoy, being in courses that are playing to our strengths, that certainly helps when we're required to do readings for the course. But I think regardless of that, the best advice I can give you is when I read now, and certainly I learned more about this about myself, I think, through my master's in building connections with the reading. And so recognizing that the reading, although it's one piece of the puzzle of a course, it's also about building the connections with the other pieces of the puzzle within that course. And so how do we make sure that the reading is not insular to everything else that's happening? So building an understanding and finding that meaningful and purposeful reason why we're reading, and trying to build build the connection between what we're doing and who we are as a learner, and how that reading relates to real life, and the list goes on. So building a connection will help to unlock, I think, a better overall kind of reading process for you. So I wanted to give you a bit of a strategy, the PSR strategy, that you might want to take away and think about. It's more about reflection. And I think, that's what we've always been about in this class. But, asking ourselves, why are we reading what we're reading? So finding that purpose. Again, it's kind of going back to that building the connection. Why is this reading important or meaningful to the coursework that we're doing? What is the topic of the reading, and how does that relate? The next one is the strategy. So how am I, approaching this reading? And so, some things that I've done in the past is, I've done the reading, or I've skimmed the reading first, and then I've recognized these are things that I don't understand, and I'm putting question marks next to it. I'm perhaps underlining things that I agree with, and maybe I'm putting a check mark next to the things that I totally understand and I get. And that's a system that has worked for me in the past, that has helped me to prepare that reading for what comes next, because readings cannot be a standalone activity. They have to connect with what we're doing next. And then always, at the end, we should be checking for our own understanding, and that can't wait until an assessment. It needs to be a constant process. I think oftentimes our biggest issue with readings is that we do it and then it's done, it's over with, and we don't take it with us, or perhaps we only take it with us for a short period of time into the next class. And sometimes readings are just simply that, depending on how the professor packages it. But, in essence, we should be taking that understanding and building bridges throughout the entire course. So, what are some things that we should be thinking about when we're reading? We should be asking questions. So, if we don't understand something, don't be afraid to speak up in class and ask the professor for more details. And sometimes it's not the first person to go to is not the professor; it's a peer in the class, and don't be afraid of that. Making connections with other people and asking questions about the reading. Generally, if you don't understand it, there are other people out there that don't understand it either, and perhaps equally so, there could be people that do and are willing to give you perspective. It's still okay to be able to check in with a professor, sending off a quick email, visiting them during office hours if that is applicable to your course, depending on where we are in the in the year. And also you have to look into the point of view of the author. So, what is the author trying to get across in terms of their idea and their perspective? Looking at the evidence that's provided in the article or in the reading, being able to evaluate that evidence and determine, okay, what is important or significant and what is less so. And then obviously at the end, you need to be able to form your own opinions, to be able to share your thoughts, your ideas. And some of the richest classes that I've been in have been classes where you've been assigned a reading, and it's not just a one-off experience. It's an opportunity to come in and to share that reading and to be able to bridge the discussion and to get other people's perspective and not be afraid to be changed by other people's perspectives as well. So, just in terms of just some tips around the reading, the assigned reading that you're given, don't be afraid to ask after you've done the reading and after you've gone through a process, whatever it may be, with respect to your course, to seek out relevance. Sometimes you can figure out on your own what is relevant and what isn't, but it's okay for those waters to be a little bit murky and to be able to ask about relevance. So again, seeking that input from your instructor and your professor. Oftentimes, if there is discussion in the class, if the reading is spoken about, if notes are provided, you're going to be able to look for those things and find hints and clues within that to determine the relevance. So also that has to be front and center on your mind. Asking others, we talked about this, for their perspective. And before, one thing that has helped me is that whole process of previewing the reading beforehand. So not just jumping into a reading, being able to look at it, maybe point out things that I'm really not understanding at the very beginning before you actually jump into the reading. Maybe things that I do understand, going back to the check mark and the X and the underline and the highlight, whatever works for you, in order to make the reading not just a standalone process, basically to attach an activity to the reading so that it builds a greater understanding for you as the reader. Moving along to note taking. So this is something like the reading. When I say don't have the reading as a standalone process, I would even equally say don't make your notes or the notes that you're provided with a standalone document. Oftentimes we get a source of information, and that could be a lecture that we get, or it could be a reading that we're taking notes from, or it could be notes that are provided to us through Moodle. Those things cannot be just the be-all, end-all. We can't put all of our vested interest into those notes. We have to be able to work at it, to make sure that we have the best possible recording for ourselves so that we can review towards exams or a final paper or a final assignment of some sort. So, note taking is a process. You get a source of information. It's okay to take some summary notes, and it's okay to transcribe those into review notes and to move through a process. And sometimes those two pieces in the middle take several attempts to get to the point where we feel comfortable and we've got something that we feel is a best example of what we've learned in the class. Just some tips at the end. I just want to share with you some things that I think will prove to be important for you. So don't ignore your notes. Again, they can't be a standalone piece. Take them with you. build connections between your notes and the readings and the assignments that you're doing, and everything should be a piece of the puzzle, hopefully. Recognize how you learn and adapt that strategy. So, if you're a visual learner and the notes are posted on the board, it's easy for you to look at those and to see them and to encode that into your mind. If the professor is talking, sometimes if you're an auditory learner, you're listening and it's easier to encode. But if you're a kinesthetic learner, sometimes you need to be able to do not only to listen or to see the notes, but you need to be able to write them down. So there are different things that you could be doing that will hopefully adapt to your learning strategy and how best you learn. Recognize what's important, what's not. Don't let the vastness of notes and the vastness of information and content outcrowd the important. So again, you have to be it's a skill that you have to continually work on, is to pick out the significant points within a course or within a lecture or something of that nature, and to be able to attach that label of importance to it. And then, of course, we've already spoken to encoding notes will prove to be beneficial. And I guess what I would say to that is that, there is still a large part of university that is content and information that is provided to you, and you need to encode that in order to give that back in some form, whether it be straight content back or whether it be, making connections with the material in relation to what's going on in the world today, or whether it be forming opinion and backing it up with evidentiary support. These are all things and activities that we kind of engage with in classes, but encoding is that necessary step in all of that. So just a few reminders that I wanted to share with you. Again, I would just encourage you to reach out to Karen or myself if you're experiencing any challenges, any difficulties at all. If you have any questions, or if you're starting to think about, these are some habits that I'm forming and I don't like them, and I'm interested in sort of talking through a process by which I can develop better habits, reach out to us. We're here for you. We're here to support you. I wanted to mention one thing about courses next semester. If you haven't signed up for at least 3 courses next semester, you should do that sooner than later. We've experienced, obviously, some courses that have had, some waiting lists, and some students haven't been able to get in because of leaving things to the last minute. So get ahead of, we're kind of late in the game anyway, but get ahead of others that perhaps might be later in the game, and get those, at least those 3 courses signed up for. I will say that, just a reminder to you that in December, the registrar will evaluate everybody's record in terms of their semester GPA. And if your semester GPA is above 1.7, they will notify you about lifting the course restriction. And at that point, you can certainly look at other courses in addition to the 3 that you'll sign up for, most likely. If you're still below 1.7, then the course restriction thing will stay in place. There are advantages and disadvantages to taking more courses than the 3 that you are allowed under academic probation. So by all means, reach out to us and we can have a discussion about that, Karen or myself, and we'd be happy to do that. Please know that this week, Friday, October the 30th, is the final day to drop a course and receive a 50% refund for that course. So, and by the way, after October the 30th, it's no longer considered a discontinued course. And so whatever mark you end up in the course will remain part of that record. So I often tell students around this time that if you are failing miserably in a course, if you're doing really, really poorly, reach out to us, have a discussion with us, and maybe the best decision will be to discontinue a course. But there are other factors that come into play there. So please, have a conversation with Karen or myself, and we'll be happy to walk you through and talk through that process. Of course, you only have until Friday, so that sort of, we're giving you some advance notice on that. And then finally, continue to reflect on how things are going for you. What has been working well, what needs more attention, how can I move towards greater success? I think at this point, you have a good handle on sort of where things have perhaps gone